Hello, hello. Welcome everyone to Connect University. It's been a long break after the summer, so welcome back. Hope you're ready to gain some knowledge and discover new activities and new initiatives that the European Commission and DigiConnect is running. I'm Alex. I'm just here to warm things up, and then I will leave everything in the hands of my colleagues, Eva and Olivier. Just to remember, to engage with the speakers with us, please always leave your questions in the Slido chat, and we will make sure that the moderator will pick them up. Also, the recording and the slides will be available on Futurium. We'll make sure to add the links in the chat. And on Futurium, you will also be able to see the other upcoming Connect University session. This being said, again, don't forget your questions on Slido, and then I leave everything to Olivier.
Thank you very much, Alex, and welcome to everyone who is connected for this Connect University session on the D4D Hub. I'm Olivier Bringer. I'm heading the international team here in DigiConnect, and I'm here with our two distinguished speakers for today. So first of all, Miguel Exposito, who is the Deputy Head of Unit of the Science, Technology, Innovation and Digitalization Unit of DG INPA, International Partnership, and Sandro Bazzanella, who is the Coordinator of the D4D Hub. Miguel will tell us about what the EU has to offer to partner countries. So I guess, Miguel, you will spend some time explaining about the global gateway and the digital aspects of it. And Sandro will explain the D4D Hub, history of the D4D Hub, the organization and its achievements. I would also introduce my colleague Eva Herman, who will be the moderator for the session today. So before I pass the floor to the two speakers, I would like to briefly set the scene. As you well know, we have been very active under this commission, the von der Leyen I Commission, if I may say, on digital policies and supporting the digital transition. We have been doing a lot in the field of regulation. You have seen what we have done around platform regulation, AI regulation, cybersecurity, data, but also on technology policies with the development of research innovation in the field of semiconductors, artificial intelligence, 5G, 6G, high-performance computing or quantum, so development of the technologies, but also deployment of the technologies around Europe. And if the focus has been really on what we do in Europe, in the internal market, digital is an area where we cannot do things in isolation. We have to work with our partners globally, and we have also done quite a lot in each of these policies on their international dimension. So, for example, we have been explaining and promoting our model, our human-centric model, our different regulatory tools that we have been putting in place. We have been cooperating with a number of partners around the globe on technology development, on the deployment of digital infrastructures, but also on flanking measures like the development of digital skills. So we have used a number of instruments to do that. We have bilateral partnerships with a number of countries around the globe. We have digital dialogues. We have also been very involved on the multilateral scene. At the moment, there is a lot of discussion and preparation for the UN General Assembly at the end of the month and the Summit for the Future, where digital will feature prominently. And we have implemented our different partnerships through the Global Gateway, and I will let Miguel say a bit more about the objectives that we have tried to achieve in the field of digital under the Global Gateway, the instruments we have put in place, the priorities we have tried to follow. I think in terms of working with our partners, we have not done it on our own here in the Commission. We have really tried to follow what we call a Team Europe approach, meaning that we have been working with EU member states. We have been working with stakeholders, academia, civil society, to prepare the offer to our partners and engage with them. And I think the D4D Hub is a very good illustration of this Team Europe approach. It shows how we can work as a team in partnership with developing countries to develop very concrete projects. And I will let Sandro say a bit more about what has happened in the 4 years of operation of the D4D Hub, how we have developed projects in now 4 regions that are covered under the D4D Hub, and generally how the D4D Hub works, what it has delivered, and maybe Sandro, since we are in a transition mode now between 2 commissions, we are really thinking about what's coming next. You can also say a few words about your thinking on the next steps of the D4D Hub. So without further ado, I will give the floor to Miguel. You will have, so please ask your question on Slido, as Alex was mentioning. We will pause after the presentation of Miguel so that we can reply. Miguel can reply to your questions, and we'll pass the floor then to Sandro, and again have a Q&A session. So over to you, Miguel, on the EU offer and what's in the Global Gateway on digital.
Thank you, Olivier, and good morning to everybody. So as Olivier just said, so I will make an overview or give an overview on what we do on digitalization, and then Sandro afterwards he will give you an overview on how we have organized ourselves to deliver on that. So as Olivier mentioned in the introduction, I will start with the overall. I will start with an overview on the overall strategy, which we call Global Gateway. At the end of the day, the Global Gateway is about connecting people. It's about connecting people and with a large infrastructure component of it. It has 5 major pillars. One of them is digital, on which I will focus just afterwards. But the other pillars, which go hand in hand, are energy, transport, health, education, and research. And as you can easily see, many of these pillars are actually interconnected. So it's a comprehensive approach on how the EU interacts with its partner countries and how we try to provide a comprehensive package. It's anchored in, of course, in EU policies, the 2030 Agenda, and the Paris Agreement, ultimately in the SDGs. Underlying, we have some, this works, no, it's blocked. Let me just give me a second, trying to move the, okay, there we go. Underlying, we have some pillars of this Global Gateway strategy. First of all, as I say, we want to boost smart, clean, and secure links. Secondly, we want to have this transformative packages. So it's a more comprehensive approach, not just single projects, but something that is a package that addresses really the needs of our partner countries. And it's not only about the infrastructure, it's also about the enabling environment, regulatory frameworks, norms, standards, technologies, and know-how. So capacity building is also an important part of the package. And another very important aspect of it, and also a change compared to how we worked in the past, is innovative financial instruments. So I'm talking, or we are talking about large infrastructure investments. They require lots of funds, and this is not only done through grants from the EU. We try to join forces here with private sector, with banking sectors and others. And for example, the European Fund for Sustainable Development Plus, the so-called EFSD Plus, is one of the instruments that we use for doing this or for supporting this major investment. And last but not least, also something rather new, which was part of the Global Gateway, is the Team Europe approach, where we try to join forces, and Sandro will talk a lot about that, which is about the EU member states and the EU institutions, including their private sector and institutions, join forces to deliver on our international partnerships and cooperation. So, what is the Global Gateway when it comes to priorities? We promote human-centric digital transformation which is, I think, the most important part of it, which is probably the most distinctive part of our cooperation. So the human-centric part also focusing on bridging the digital divide. And the digital divide has several components. It's about access to connectivity. It's about also access to all the parts of the society, to the digitalization and what comes with it. It has also a gender focus and is trying to be as integrating as possible. Another part is resilience and security. So that's an important part of digitalization nowadays. I don't have to go deeper into that. And third one is about digital empowerment. It's also about giving partner countries sustainable digital environments and ecosystems, and the making them or empowering them in a sense that they can decide the way they want to take, and not being dependent as in probably some other aspects or other partners will be doing. Fostering open, secure, and free cyberspace. That is also about the human-centric, and it's related to that. And promoting EU services assets across the globe. And I can give you an example on that. You might have heard about Copernicus, which is the Earth observation program of the EU, which produces an enormous amount of data, and this data is freely accessible, and it's part of the offer that the EU has for partner countries. And last but certainly not least, we have the twin transition, which is about the green and digital transition. You can see it both ways. The green transition supported by digitalization, and also the other way around. So what are we doing more concretely on a global scale? So we are focusing on 4 main areas. It's not exclusively, but these are the main areas. First, governance. So as I said before, it's about creating the necessary environment for digitalization. So it includes regulatory frameworks and data protection. And I would also put here cybersecurity and the security aspects. We have digital connectivity, which is, of course, at the core of our cooperation, which includes all types of infrastructure that we need nowadays for connectivity, from subsea cables to the last mile connectivity, from 5G to satellite-based secure connectivity. Then, as I said also previously, skills, entrepreneurship, and access to finance. So it's about capacity building. It's about supporting the ecosystem economic ecosystem of partner countries, the small and medium-sized enterprises that quite often are the backbone of the economy and nowadays are driven by data and hence by digitalization. And last but certainly not least again, it's about e-services, so public and private, including e-governance, which goes from e-identity to e-health and all the other related services that go with digitalization. Some global gateway objectives, as I mentioned before, so I will go a little bit quicker on this one. So it's about inclusive expansion of digital connectivity, inclusive also in a societal point of view, resilience and security of the digital connectivity, an open, global, and interoperable internet, contributing to the twin transition and international cooperation on research and innovation and the Green Deal. And you see underlying, we have these 3 boxes. We do this via the Team Europe approach with member states, but also financial institutions. We work together with the private sector and international like-minded partners. So we try really to be as inclusive as possible on that and to really be a broad and open player in a multilateral and multi-stakeholder way. So the EU modus of operandi to digital connectivity, we have several layers, if you want so, starting with international connectivity, connecting continents, and I will give you some examples on that later on. It's mainly about submarine cables, but nowadays more and more also about secure satellite-based connectivity. Then we work also on regional connectivity, so trying to connect the dots regional areas and inland. And then we talk also, and we work also on digital infrastructures and open internet, which also includes data centers and data processing. And last but not least, national connectivity, serving the underserved. So the last mile that I mentioned beforehand, for difficult to reach areas, thinly populated areas, which can be 5G, which can be satellite, all mixed of different technologies to make it happen that we connect also the usually unserved or underserved parts of the society. You see below the box, which is the enabler of other sectors and types of connectivity. We said before, or I said beforehand, e-services, data governance, regulatory framework, and digital scales are the enabling environment that we need to create to then work into the space of the infrastructure and to use it in a sustainable way. We need trusted vendors so that we take care of the security aspects of the connectivity, cyber, local training, and resource efficiency. And as I said before, there are different layers of connectivity and components. So the submarine cable, the terrestrial backbones of the regional connectivity, the data centers for the data processing, which is finally what is going through the cables, and the last mile access for the underserved or difficult to reach areas. So some concrete example, probably the most prominent that has been also quite a lot in the media. It's actually the first undersea subsea cable connecting Europe with South America. It's a so-called Bella cable. It connects Europe from Portugal to Brazil, and then we have, which is Bella S, so the submarine cable, and then we have Bella T, so the terrestrial part, which now connects already quite a large number of countries in Latin America. You have Argentina, you have Chile, you have Ecuador, and Peru, and now Colombia. And actually, there's something missing here. It's also Panama that's already connected to the cable, where we have also a large data center for emergency services and Copernicus data. So it shows you also this comprehensive package I was talking about earlier. So where we have the connectivity, but also linked to it the services and the capacity building, like it's the case in Panama. And then we have Bella 2, future links that will further connect other countries, more in Central America and the Caribbean. Another example is the Medusa Mediterranean cable connecting the Mediterranean regions, and you see there are quite a lot of landing places from France, Spain, Italy to basically the Maghreb and a part of the Mashrek. And this also can then be further expanded, as we saw previously in the Bella cable. The Medusa Mediterranean cable also provides opportunity of further linking to other areas, as it might be further down the African western coast, Cabo Verde, and others. Important aspect of this cooperation, you see submarine cables, you see data centers. These are large-scale infrastructures, and they require quite some substantial funding and financing. And this doesn't work in the way we have worked quite for some time, many years, which is about providing grants from the EU budget alone. These infrastructure investments are far bigger and require a different financial architecture, if you want so. And we need to leverage the investment grants, the grants that we provide directly from the EU budget, from Global Europe budget, but they are only the part that leverages other parts that need to be put in place for the financing of these large investments, blending financing via the European Investment Bank, for example, or other financial institutions, and other tools like guarantees, so that we have a guarantee on the more risky part of the investment, and other financial tools that might be, for example, export credits. So there are different tools that we combine. They have a substantial investment package. And then you see, just as an example, how this looks, then we might have around 50% of a grant and a large investment, 25% as coming from as a loan from EIB. From other EU financial institutions, we might have another 20%. It might be a national or from a member state development bank coming in with a loan, and 40% from the private sector, the commercial part of it. And this, the whole package then facilitates them to do these large-scale investments I was talking about. So this is really a very broad overview on what we do on digitalization. Only 2 examples that we gave on connectivity. There are many other areas in which we are also active, and I just wanted to mention a few of them. So cybersecurity is becoming a very prominent and important part of cooperation, and not only when it comes to security, but also to employment. If you look at OECD projections of employment in the future, this is one of the fastest growing sectors, and where hundreds of thousands, millions actually, of new posts are needed. And so there we link it back to capacity building and the training and the research and the innovation, where we train and work on capacity building in partner countries for this opportunity. And then it's a lot about also new technologies. Artificial intelligence there's been quite some hype about it. So we work on artificial intelligence for good, as we call it, for example, for emergency services, so for data mining and providing accurate information in a very short time period and lab. So lots of activities there, and I don't go further down in others like blockchain and quantum computing. So it's a very broad field, but we have a strategic framework, which is the Global Gateway. We have clear indicators, and we have a clear set of strategic priorities on that, because such a large field as digitalization requires, I think, quite some structured way of going forward with that. And this said, that's on my end, and on how we do this in Team Europe and how we work together. This is for Sandro. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much, Miguel, for this presentation. And before we hear from our next speaker, Sandro, we would like to turn to everyone who's connected online and give you an opportunity to interact with our speakers and ask any questions you may have at this stage for them. So I see that there are already a few questions in the chat. There's one question which online participants are very curious about. It has been voted up already. And this question is, which of the 4 priorities is doing better than the rest? Why do you think that is? So I assume that this question is referring to the presentation from Miguel, talking about the different digital priority areas. And I will just, Miguel, give you also another question. So, and then afterwards, I would say we can do another round of questions right after. The second question I see here is, can you get more partnerships? So over to you, Miguel.
Thank you for this. Thank you for these interesting and tricky questions. So on the 4 priorities, rather than which is working better, I would say which one is probably more complex than the other. So as you know, the EU is quite well equipped when it comes to regulatory frameworks. That's something we have a long track record. We are very confident in providing support in this. So I would say this is probably something that is easier to do. What is more complicated is exactly what I was talking about before, is the large infrastructure projects. Large infrastructure, because they're very complex. We need to combine quite a lot of different actors from the banking sector, from financial institutions, from member states. And some of these sectors, they are not used to work in such a coordinated way on large infrastructure projects on a global scale. So I would say this is the more challenging part. I wouldn't say it's working less good than the others, but it just requires more gray matter and requires a lot of coordination efforts. So this is something that is certainly a little bit more complicated. And then for the other question that was on the partnerships, extending partnerships, very good question, and I think a very relevant question. We are looking very actively in extending partnerships. So we have, this is what Sandro will talk about, we have, of course, the D4D Hub and the member states with whom we work, but there are other like-minded partners with whom we are working more and more closely, certainly with the US. We have the TTC, as we call it, the Technology Council, and in which we try to coordinate certain operations and work together and on digitalization. We are looking into working with other like-minded partners, as, for example, Japan and Australia, that have more presence in certain areas of the world, so the Pacific, for example, where it would make a lot of sense just to expand our cooperation and put more resources there, but rather to join forces with those that have similar ideas, so like-minded partners, and have already a good presence on the field. So these are partnerships, so with like-minded partners that we are actively extending and fostering. And on the other side, of course, what is very close to part of the priorities of the EU is multilateralism and multi-stakeholderism, so also with UN agencies. So we work a lot with UN. Education is, for example, as we said, a part of our cooperation. And there we work, for example, with UNICEF, where we have also projects related to connectivity and education. So yeah, partnerships is important. It's part of our name, actually, international partnerships of our Directorate General. But it's also really something that we are very actively pursuing and trying to increase, because this is a complex world. The needs are enormous when it comes to digital and digitalization. And even if we do a huge effort from the EU, it's not sufficient. We need other partners to really get the job done.
Thank you, Miguel. So I'm looking again to the audience, and I see that there's a few additional questions that the online participants are really interested to know more about. I will take for now 2 of those. So the first question is, I saw there are 4 regions. Which one is the most active? So I assume you refer to the regions that the D4D Hub is active in. So I will give Sandro an opportunity to address that question, but I'm sure he's also going to touch on that in his upcoming presentation. And another question that I see in the chat is, in practice, what steps is the D4D Hub taking to encourage teamwork and knowledge sharing between Europe and its global partners? So I would say we take those questions first, and then we can have possibly another round of questions if there are any. So over to you, Sandro.
Thank you. I just see if the camera coming to me.
Yes.
Now it is. Okay, excellent. Thank you, and good morning or good afternoon, depending on evening, wherever you are. Good question. So I will go through those points during my presentation, but just to give now perhaps some views. The Digital for Development Hub Secretariat has been set up and launched in December 2020 and has been progressively expanding, and it's really an interesting experience that is done. It's not something that has been designed from the beginning with, I would say, a mandate which was already organizing everything. It was a political initiative that is progressively structured, and I would just touch on that, but the current secretariat has been even set up only 1.5 years ago, just to show a bit the dynamic in which this is taking place. And in doing so, it's obvious that the D4D Hub is there to implement also the Global Gateway objective, and this expansion of attention from the European perspective on not keeping digital only internal to Europe, but reconnecting with partner countries and getting a coherent approach And therefore, in that part, Africa was the first objective. And that's why activities have started quite naturally with the flow, the political flow, focusing on Africa. And what we have seen subsequently is more recently the reconnection with the Latin America Caribbean region, and we see quite a lot of activities taking place there. And more recently, now we are also starting to work on the Asia-Pacific regions, which in fact correspond internally to the scope of work of DG INPA. And since now January this year, we have a new branch that has been launched, and now which are focusing on the neighboring countries, Western Balkan and accession countries, and then the activities are just starting on that part. In terms of partnership, I think the point is also part of my presentation is that in the Global Gateway, it's clear that the Team Europe, it's particularly important. And when we refer to Team Europe, we refer about joining resources together between European member states and the European Commission to jointly implement development cooperation objectives. And we do that in cooperation with financial institutions, private sector and civil society to reach a real multi-stakeholders approach. So it's thematic by thematic that member states and the European Commission are working together depending on which thematic and which budget are available and which geographical footprint are most prioritized. So we are very agile and adaptable to those situations. So that's, I would say, if you follow obviously the same geographical footprint I was saying, obviously the evolution and implementation of those initiatives are following the same flow. In doing so, it's also important that I will make a point on that, is that the D4D Hub Secretariat is there to incubate those Team Europe initiatives, so to facilitate that, I would say, co-creation aspect. But at the moment that the initiative or the action is approved and budget allocated, the work stopped there. We do not enter in the implementation, which is another business. We are there as a platform, a strategic platform to incubate those initiatives. But then I will go deeper in my presentation.
Okay, thank you very much. So before we come to the presentation, we'll have 2 more questions, and then we will have another talk. So if we share any feel free to share any questions that you might have in the chat. Yeah, for now, we will take 2 more, and then we come to Sandro's presentation. So I see here 2 questions that might be for you, Miguel. So the first one is, how do we secure these cables that we were talking about earlier? The Russians may have already mined some of them, so a bit of a provocative question. And then I'll give you another one as well. So, or feel free to also answer that from your colleague's side. How do you ensure European visibility in these projects? Are there predefined rules for outreach? And if yes, do you foresee any improvements? So over to INPA.
Thank you. Okay, thank you. Yeah, I start with the Russian question. So, and security of subsea cables. First of all, I think that there's a kind of misunderstanding in the public how easy it is really to cut through a submarine cable. It's not so easy. It's quite a complicated operation. Most of these cables they are very deep in the ocean, several thousand meters. So you need really quite some technology to do that. Nevertheless, it's not impossible. And what we do is we will just use the technical term is redundancy. Yeah, so trying to have several routes, cable routes that can circumvent a cut somewhere. Imagine a triangle, and if you cut it on one side, you can get to the point using the other 2 cables that are still working. So that's redundancy. That's number 1. So cables that are connected, interconnected, and can, in case of a disruption, then provide extra connectivity. And it's not only about attacks from hostile countries. It's also about, for example, about earthquakes, subsea earthquakes. And you might have heard that some years ago there was one well, last year actually, that cut through the only cable connecting Tonga in the middle of the Pacific, and they were out of business, or connectivity-wise, for 3 weeks, for 3 weeks until a ship could get there and repair the cable. So another reason for having redundancy. And last but not least, another type of redundancy is not only the cables, it's also about satellite-based connectivity. In case of a failure of a cable, you can then switch, probably not at the same speed, but still with a large coverage to satellite-based connectivity. This so much to the security of the cables. And then when it comes to visibility, just one word on my side, and then I give to Katerina to give you more insights. In general terms, visibility of EU is part of the agreement that we have with partner countries. So there are some fixed norms in our cooperation, international cooperation, that ensures visibility, because it's an important part. We want to show our partners and that the funds provided by, at the end of the day, the European citizen. So, and therefore, this visibility is important to showcase this. I don't know, Katerina, you want to add something?
Hi, good morning all. I can just add that indeed, as Miguel said, there are predefined rules when it comes to communication, outreach and visibility, that in the case, for example, and those are predefined for all kinds of projects that the Commission and DG of the Commission works on. So INTPA has applied the same rules as in any other DG. And in the case of the D4D Hub, for example, but here we have also Ziri, the outreach and visibility manager of the D4D Hub. Everything has been agreed with our communication unit, and everything, for example, as you can see also here, all the visibility of the EU and the global gateway, because the D4D Hub is an instrument of the global gateway, has always been assured. So all the visibility, communication and outreach activities are in line with the global gateway, respect the global gateway guidelines when it comes to and Commission guidelines when it comes to communication, and because of the Team Europe, because the D4D Hub is a Team Europe, then this also applies to the member states, and so the visibility of the EU and the global gateway is also ensured and increased. I don't know if Ziri would like you to add anything, or Sandro on this.
Maybe afterwards, because Sandro has a slide on outreach.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And thank you also to everyone who asked very interesting questions already to our speakers. Okay, thank you so much for all these answers, and thanks to everyone for your very interesting questions. You will have another chance to interact with our speakers after the next presentation. So now we will hear from Sandro Bazzanella about the D4D Hub. And so I would like to now hand the floor to Sandro. Over to you.
Thank you, Eva. Thank you, Miguel, also for your presentation. In my follow-up, I'll now take over a bit more the practical implementation of the more political perspective that has been presented up to now from the global and the D4D Hub, the Digital for Development Hub Secretariat, which is an initiative among some member states interested in the digital for development and the European Commission to implement concretely what has been presented mainly on the global gateway and the Team Europe, which I will not now develop here on this. You will see also that this is, as I was saying in my comments earlier, something which is progressive. It's a recent organization which has been launched politically on December 2020. It was a high-level launched by the President of the Commission, von der Leyen, and 5 member states represented at the highest level. We'll see that we have progressively expanded our membership, and we are now 16 member states, and we still expect new one to come. So all interested in digital for development. And the overall objective, as I said, is to work on the global gateway and implement a true Team Europe approach. And obviously, the COVID-19 has accelerated that process. In terms, as I said, it's an organization, and I touched that also a bit earlier, that has been in evolution. So it is not a classical secretariat that is structured with an objective, is that we try to work progressively and learn also from our experiences, because we are kind of the first platform where we have a strategic platform to implement that cooperation among member states and the European Commission. As I indicated here, it started as a political launch in 2020, December 2020. So, as I said, a young organization focusing and starting with Africa, obviously reconnecting now with LAC, with the EU LAC summit that took place in July 2023, and which is reconnecting Europe with that regions. Now follow with activities that we have in Africa and the Pacific, Africa and Pacific, region. And more recently, the regions that has been launched since early this year, covering, I would say, Northern Africa, mainly Western Balkan, and the Eastern Partnership. As you see, it's also, as I said, it originally was a political initiative that has been launched. It was an informal structure where there were some online collaboration between members. Considering the success and the interest from all the members to continue and the new members joining the initiative, the current secretariat has been coming in as starting from 2023 with the objective to structure and professionalize all that dialogue and cooperation. Next slide. And so in a nutshell, as I said, it's an strategic platform where we try, I would say, to increase the impact that Europe can reach and do with its partners by joining forces among the European member states and the European Commission, and doing so in a multi-stakeholders approach where we work in close collaboration with the financial institutions, private sector and civil society, and we'll touch a word on that in our own structure with some specific advisory group. And obviously, as a European platform, we would like to make sure that we ensure and we highlight the human-centric approach that we have regarding digital transformation. Okay, as I said, we started with 5 member states. We are now 16. That gives you a bit a view on all. Membership is free, so any European member states can join this initiative. But the point is that must be an interest and a readiness to work on digital for development cooperation.
It's coming.
It's coming. Okay. Now, the structure. That slide is pretty, I would say, packed, but I think it gives also an idea on what we want in one slide, and perhaps the complexity on how also it is to bring together so many member states and the European institutions. But at the same time, I think it gives a good overview on what we are. And as I said, it's 16 member states at the moment. We are thinking and we are expecting new member states still to join. We work on a geographical footprint, as I was also explaining. We started, I think it's also important here to reflect in the middle, you can see geographical engagement. We started to work on the regional aspect because it was, I would say, the way we were structured originally, so-called regional programming when we were doing those Team Europe initiative. And we are now exploring since a few months also the possibility to support Team Europe initiative in individual countries. So we try to see how the Secretariat from Brussels can help EU delegations and member states in country to replicate our experiences at national level in those countries. We are currently doing some pilot countries, 3 in Africa and 2 in Latin America, Caribbean, so namely Tanzania, Kenya, and Nigeria for Africa, and Colombia and Brazil for Latin America and Caribbean region. Depending on the result, we will then take the lesson learned and propose that to be expanded to any countries that would be interested in the future. Those geographical regions obviously are supported by thematic working groups that will review. There are 10 now that have been created, I would say, progressively, starting with entrepreneurship and innovation, so focusing on the private sector, and also digital and green. But based on the needs and the requests, those, I would say, sectors have been increasing. And if we touch perhaps from a DG Connect perspective, we are very active and collaboration on the trusted vendors aspect for the connectivity. Obviously, we are working also on cybersecurity at the moment, and obviously more and more on artificial intelligence and this human-centric approach. And I think we will touch a bit also on that towards later in the presentation. This is supported by outreach. I think we've touched a word also. I think it's important element to have all that work together, better communicated with the partner countries, partner regions on what Europe is doing for them. And we have a knowledge management, which is now starting to be developed, I would say this first stage, mainly internal, but we are also considering and working on sharing other type of information outside. In terms of impact, you can see what we try to do. Obviously, to our support of the Team Europe initiative, we try to mobilize new investment through joint initiative. We are supporting policy dialogue with our partner countries to better identify their needs. We also we are working on this Team Europe visibility in the outreach approach. I touched a word already on the multi-stakeholders collaboration, the human-centric, and obviously, as I said, on the knowledge sharing. I just make clear that all those slides will be shared afterwards, and we remain obviously available. It's a first overview on what we do. Here the same, I said we started with 2 working groups. You can see we are moving. I think that's what the trusted vendors aspect that is very important here is ended in the connectivity working group. We have the cybersecurity working group, and we have the artificial intelligence where DG Connect is mainly active at the moment, but we see that expanding and expanding in general. Next slide. Thank you. As I said, in this multi-stakeholders approach, we pay a special attention to the private sector and the civil society. Here also, it's work in progress. So we have 2 advisory groups, and they are following the geographic expansion that I mentioned earlier. So our members are now mainly, I would say, from Africa. That's where we started. Now we have more and more from Latin America, Caribbean, because it was the second region that we were, and obviously from Europe. And we are now seeking to expand our memberships to the other regions in which we start to also be active. I think at this stage, that's what I can say here. We have tried to summarize this multi-stakeholders approach, as you can see, a bit the complexity, but I think also the benefit of creating those links between what could be, in another term, silos, but we try to bring that together in a more, I would say, team approach. And especially when you look, and that's why you can see on the European Union, we started obviously with DG INPA, we have now DG NEAR. DG Connect is a central element. Now external services started to work with us, but now more and more engaged with those test countries that we are doing, because obviously we work more and more with the EU delegations, and obviously with the financing, we have the European Investment Bank. If you look on the EU member states, we started mainly with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs on the one hand, and then development implementing agencies, but obviously we now have also other ministries are coming in, and also we are exploring more and more collaboration with the financial institution at national level, and for example here also working on them on the trusted vendors component. Private sector, I already mentioned a bit, touch about it, civil society with our advisory group, and obviously we try to interact with our regional partners, and obviously at those different levels. And so that's what the Hub try to do, is offering that platform to integrate that approach in an integrated manner. Breaking the silo, I think it's also an interesting point for our discussion. because obviously when we started, as I said, we brought together from an INPA perspective, development cooperation, and which was a normal focus. But the more and more we discuss and the more and more we see that there are other aspects that are coming in. And I think Miguel has already mentioned and touched some of them through the Global Gateway programming. But we see that I would say international development, foreign policy, digital policies are somehow more and more coming together. And we see also in those discussions, especially, for example, on cybersecurity, it's clear that cybersecurity trusted vendors are not only international development aspect, but also contain the others two aspects to ensure that we can offer a true human-centric approach based on some EU values. And I think that's where the Hub tried to make some links, and I'm sure that we will have some perhaps interesting questions on that part. Finally, there was the point also on the outreach. In this, we try here to come together with the EU institution and the member states to come with an integrated message on what we have incubated together and how we can do it on the one hand, and also reinforce through our political dialogue what Europe could do with the different regions. The D4D Hub tried to serve as an umbrella brand to integrate all of that. And we have, and invite you to visit our new website that has just been developed, where we try, I would say also through that to communicate clearly on what we do. And you will see and you will hear more on us also on some specific knowledge management tool for our external partner. I don't know if you, Atsiri, you would like to add some words on that. If you want, I'm here with my colleague Atsiri, who is responsible for, I would say, our outreach and strategic communication on this, and more than happy then we can engage on that. I think that was the first overview on the Digital for Development Hub Secretariat. As I said, a very young organization that still is in progress. The Secretariat itself is quite recently established, so we try, and then we speak about a few words about the future. We have tried now to structure a bit all what has been done now here, and we will have a board of directors at the end of this year, which will certainly be an important moment with the new Commission to decide a bit also what would be our next strategic steps in regarding the future collaboration on those aspects. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sandro. So now we look again to the audience, and we would like to open up for another round of questions and answers. I would say first I take two questions that are sort of linked, relating to the role of member states in the D4D Hub. So the first question is, are there any member states which are particularly active? I would say we can give Sandro an opportunity to take that question. And then the second question is, in the Team Europe approach, how do you ensure that individual member states' ambitions are fully aligned with EU priorities? So maybe that's a question that Miguel would like to take. And yeah, with that, I hand over back to the speakers. Over to you, Sandro.
Thank you. Regarding the member states' involvement, I would say it's all of them are active, because I would say that's also part of the DNA of the D4D Hub. I don't know, but you have seen we've started with 5 member states. We are now 16. I said that we may have a bit more. That means that it's only the countries who have an interest to collaborate on that topic that are joining. They're joining on a pure voluntary basis. That means that they are all active. What does that mean? That they are not active everywhere. They are active, I would say, in, depending the regions, perhaps that camera. Okay, now it's perhaps better now I see the camera. I'm just saying that they are active, or they are coming for a specific regions for which they are interested, or they are coming for specific thematic. The two approaches are possible, because you can imagine, obviously, if you take a country like Estonia, which is a country which has clearly a clear agenda on all the e-government approach. That has a kind of thematic focus, but that doesn't mean to be able to run, I would say, also major activities everywhere, but they are very active in the hub, and I think it's give also an opportunity for them to join forces with other countries. There are obviously other countries with bigger, more important budget, more important structure that have a much more larger geographical scope and thematical scope. And I think what we try to do in the hub is to offer this platform, and that's why I was saying we are obviously moving from, I would say, we started with Africa, and we are now moving to LAC, and we are exploring the others. We try to bring now the possibility for member states to join forces with the European Commission, but based on specific geographies or specific thematic. That's a bit how we work, but all are very active on this. I think that was my questions. I've seen some others that are very interesting in the hub, that in the chat that we come further on afterwards, especially about I think I see budget or investment that we can discuss. Thank you.
So, and on the question linked to the alignment of EU member states to EU policies, well, one part, as Eva rightly mentioned, is actually linked to the previous question. So first of all, D4D is actually also an exchange platform. That's where we have thematic exchange. So you saw the 10 thematic groups that we have inside D4D, where the Commission also clearly gives indications on the priorities and the policies of the EU in this area, and also on a regional level. So this is certainly one forum where we have the opportunity of alignment. But there are also others in the EU. I will just mention one. We have the Council Working Parties, where the EU member states have exchanges on particular thematic topics. Myself, I represent the Commission frequently in the one on security and cybersecurity, where we also inform and brief member states on current policy developments and priorities. So there are different fora, more formal ones like the Council Working Parties with EU member states, then the platform D4D, and also other exchange mechanisms inside the EU, like different committees, also with the DEVE committee from the Parliament, for example. So there are different areas where we make sure that information flows and that alignment is part of our initiative, which is all the idea of Team Europe at the end of the day. Thank you.
Thank you, Miguel, and thank you, Sandro. So let's look again at the questions. I would take two more that are linked to the D4D Hub and how it works. So the first question is about the D4D Hub's multi-stakeholder approach. So somebody is asking in the chat, is the D4D Hub managing the stakeholders, or is there some different setup for this? How does it work? So that will be something for Sandro to cover. And then the next question is linked to money, to the budget. So what is the budget of this initiative? How much has D4D invested already? So for that, I would give INTPA an opportunity to answer, and then we can take some additional questions afterwards. Over to you, Sandro.
Thank you. On the question on multi-stakeholders approach, I would say I would not use the word managing. Perhaps it's a bit too directive, especially. But I think it's very interesting questions. Let's say that what we try to do first is that I think it's an European initiative. Is to where we try European member states and the European Commission try to join forces together. And I think the idea was clearly to recognize that, you know, facing, I would say, global competition, having the European Commission working together, having European member states working together was perhaps not the best way to work, while development cooperation is still an area of total sovereignty for the member states. And that's why we have created this platform, which is in a place where a strategic platform where members and the European Commission can come and meet and agree together to incubate some initiative. And that's what I'm saying. Currently, this is all, I would say, work in progress. Experiences that we are doing is quite a unique experiences where member states, and as I was explaining also, can come with their own geographical priorities or thematic priorities and explore to see who is willing to work with them, and the same for the European Commission, and try to work together. And in doing so, and I think it's especially important from the European perspective, on the human-centric, we try to have this coherent approach. So we invite and we explore how to work with the civil society and the private sector, and that's why we have also set up the advisory group. Just a few words on those advisory groups. They have been created and operationalized, I would say, towards the end of last year, and then they are now fully operational. As I said, from a membership perspective, we started to have quite a good membership for Africa. We start to have also for Latin America, Caribbean, and Europe, and we are expanding it. And I think that that's how we try to work. And we have also now more and more discussion with the financial institutions, which was, I would say progressively embedded, because obviously when we speak about budget is very important. But also, for example, in this case, about the trusted vendors, I'm always coming with that because I think it's a topic which is particularly important for DG Connect, was also something that was emerging progressively, a recognition that something has to be done, starting also, for example, perhaps more with the European Investment Bank, and now extending that discussion to the financial institutions. And so we had, for example, a high-level meeting in June last year where we discussed the financing in general. We touched that aspect, and then we had kind of working group meeting that was specifically dedicated to that discussion, and which ended up with one of our main meetings that we have called the exchange days, where we are meeting together internally among our members to discuss on how to address that. And trusted vendors was, I would say, a discussion that we had among European member states, the European Commission, and the financial institutions, the European Financial Institution, for example. And that's how we were working. So obviously, when we speak also about multi-stakeholders, it's not everybody everywhere on every topic. It depends. But we try, I would say, to embed, and that's how we are currently, I would say, working toward those processes. But the way we are currently working is already changed, because we try to also learn from our experiences, and it will continue to evolve. Because I was saying those two advisory groups that we have currently, we try also to offer services for our members. So here in this case, the private sector and the civil society, so that it's not only a unidirectional discussion. We as a secretariat consulting them on the initiative we are doing, but we try also to offer them a platform for them to come and to bring some of their concerns, some of that topic that they would like to discuss. And I'm just taking an interesting example that we have done for the civil society. We have an organization, DIAL, the Digital Alliance, which had some digital principle, but that were a bit outdated, and they wanted to, I would say, review and update them. And they worked, but they work in collaboration with our platform, which was allowing them to be more easier in contact with other civil society organizations, and therefore sharing more their experiences among them through the D4D Hub. And finally, that work that took place among all those civil society members has been finalized in an updated version that is also of high interest for us. So you see, I think we try to adopt also a very dynamic approach, where it is, I would say, a bit different from just simply asking or collaboration or a consultation with those stakeholders. So we try to engage also with them so that they have some benefit for their participation, and we can also use that experiences in our own work. So that's a bit, I would say, the dynamic approach that we have with this multi-stakeholders approach.
And for the question on the budgets, so the money, this is for my colleague, Katerina.
Thank you, Miguel. So this initiative is a Team Europe initiative, which means that D4D Hub, which means that is co-financed by the European Commission and some of the 16 member states, by 5 of the 16 member states. The total budget of the D4D Hub is 13 million. So it is co-financed by, on the side of the Commission, by INPA and also a contribution from DG NEAR, and then by 5 member states, which are Germany, Italy, Spain, France, Belgium, and then a contribution also from Finland and Slovenia. But the interesting thing is that in the questions, the question asked how much has invested. The D4D Hub does not invest. The D4D Hub creates opportunity, if you want, for further investment. So, and foster investment, scale up investment, and so on forth. So with the work that the D4D Hub has put in place and ensuring coordination and harmonization of action among the 16 member states, part of it, has generated an investment roughly of 500 million in the different regions. At the moment, I mean, those 500 millions are for Africa, Sub-Saharan Africa, Latin America, and Asia Pacific. DG NEAR just joined, so we are still not able to track, in any case, activities as slowly started. So this is, let's say that the return on investment is, if we can say so, it's quite positive. And it's not only about investment in terms of money, but it's also investment in terms of cooperation on the ground among the EU and the member states, making sure that then we are stronger together comparing to the other geopolitical actors. Thank you.
Just to complement on what Katerina just mentioned now, I think it's also important, and it was very good questions. The fact is, I refer to what I was saying, is that the hub is a platform for incubation. So as I said, we try to facilitate that cooperation among member states and European institutions, and also a component from financial institutions, to jointly identify a need and then to develop a Team Europe initiative for an action up to the moment that it's becoming, I would say, mature and finalized. At the moment that, I would say, the operation of incubation is finished, we stop our work at that moment, and I would say then the effective implementation of the activity is taking place, and the hub is not involved in that process. We are a very light structure, as I think, and the idea is to remain light, is just to create that strategic platform, but in a very light and dynamic approach. So we are not an implementing agency. We are not another kind of organization that would go, I would say, to something which is different, and which there are already bodies supervising implementation of activities. So we try that to complement and to come in, as I said, with this incubation aspect. And that's why I think it's important about those, I would say, budget that has referred for the D4D Hub. It's mainly human resources, rental of office, some travel, some organization for meetings. That's why the budget itself is very limited. What we try to do, and those 500 millions is what has been incubated. And once, after the incubation, as I said, we stop our work and then start the effective implementation. I would add another aspect also there, is that what we try also to do, and is to support some political dialogue, and then try also to help mainstreaming or bring it together or already existing activities in a more coherent approach. And I refer here, for example, on the Latin America Caribbean regions after the July 2023 summit, in the framework of the Digital Alliance in November 2023, 5 main thematic areas have been identified for the regions that will feed all the political dialogue discussion in the regions towards the July 2025 summit, the next summit. And in the meantime, what the Hub is also doing is supporting those political dialogue, but we are also currently working on a mapping of all in those thematic that have been identified, what the European Commission is already doing and what the member states are already doing, and see if it's possible also to bring it, I would say, more coherently together, so that rather than having those individual activities already taking place but separated, bring that see if there are synergies to bring them in a more coherent, I would say, impactful implementation, and also outreach and communication. I think that's what the Secretary play as a role there, also in complement to the creation of new activities.
Thank you very much. So let's turn again to the audience and see if there's any more questions. I'm having a look at the chat and I'm seeing that the colleagues connected online are very interested in the EU offer and the role of China. So I would say we look to China and also the Asia Pacific region next. There's another question linked to the Asia Pacific region. So I would say we start first with the easier question, which is, are the Asia Pacific regions more interested in specific subtopics of digitalization? And then we could come to two questions that are linked and are about the EU offer. So somebody is asking, how does the EU offer to our international development partners compare to that of China currently? How might we improve to be a partner of choice? This was voted up also by several people. And the other question which is linked is, how are we communicating the benefits of the European offer in comparison to competing offers like the ones from China? And is conditionality a barrier to this? So over to Intpa.
Well, thank you for this. Finally, we come to the China question. I was waiting for this. And it comes to threefold, so very good. Starting, as Eva said, with the easier question on Southeast Asia and the Pacific. Yeah, there are some priority areas of cooperation there. Two of them linked, actually, which is connectivity and Earth observation data. This is certainly a need as you know, there are several countries in the region particularly vulnerable to the effects of climate change. Therefore, Earth observation data is important. And for Earth observation, this is big data. You need also connectivity. Just to give you a concrete example, I co-finance a Copernicus Center in the Philippines for emergency services, but which is also then tracking other areas or other types of activities like biodiversity and other marine actions. So for this, as I said, you need also connectivity. And another area that is of interest in the region is cybersecurity. Not surprisingly, this is really a burning and hot topic, I would say, almost as much as artificial intelligence. But I link these activities back to the other two questions. It's a very competitive region, to put it this way. So there are other global actors around, China for certainly, but not alone. There are also others that are more like-minded, that have also their own offer. So we try really to concentrate in areas that are really of need and where we have a competitive edge. So on Earth observation, for example, we are, without being shy on that, we are actually world leaders, and the Copernicus program is certainly one of the most complete that are around. Coming back, how do we, what's the difference, or to put it this way, what's the difference of our offer compared, and how do we advocate for that? So the difference is going back to my initial presentation, I think the second or third slide, it's about the human-centric. This is really at the heart of our digital cooperation. It's a rights-based cooperation. It's about the individual and the rights to access services and the rights to have an internet connection, and of protecting it in a secure way. So this is certainly something that is of utmost importance for us, and I think this is really a difference that matters. So sometimes you might think, okay, countries are mainly interested in the infrastructure, and what comes with it is not so important. This is no longer the case, and I can give you a very concrete example. 2 years ago, there was a cyber attack on Costa Rica, which has an enormous effect on the country. So it attacked the financial system, the trading system, the port, the harbor wasn't working for several weeks, and actually also the health system. So secure connectivity became a very important topic in Latin America, the Caribbean, and so also in other countries. So, and what comes with it is also regulatory framework, for which the EU is an important partner and a respected partner. So you need the right legislation in place to have a functioning digital ecosystem. And you need another important, I think, differential aspect of our cooperation is we try to provide them with the support to be sovereign digital countries. It's really about also dependence or the lack of dependence to make the right choices on their own and not to be dependent on other countries, actors that control at the end of the day the digital infrastructure. I think these are very distinctive and very important differences when it comes to China. This is a concrete question and a very concrete answer to that. So we provide a sovereign approach and a human-centric approach. Last question, and how do we communicate that? There I'm also a little bit critical on what we do. I think we can really improve, or we need to improve our communication. We do it already. We have, of course, the global gateway, and there are some strategies on communication. We have digital diplomacy activities that we do in the EU. It's not only DG INPA, we do it with External Action Service, other DGs, DG NEAR, the foreign policy instruments. So we do some active communication in these areas. We do it also through the UN fora, where we have programs of action, where we communicate also on our human-centric approach and try to foster this. But I see there quite a lot of room for improvement on communication. This is nothing new to those following the EU, where this is a common critique that our communication needs to be beefed up and improved. And I think this is certainly also the case when it comes to the digital cooperation and the distinctive offer that the EU makes compared to other global actors.
Just perhaps to complement very concretely on some examples of also for because the Asia Pacific regions and how I think it's an interesting example on how the hub is working. As I said, it's a very flexible and agile structure. So we try also to reflect on our members. And I think in the region is, I said, a new region that we start to work on. It's huge. It's very different from the others. Quite a lot of the very variety of countries, a huge geographical footprint. And the point of the hub was trying to say to identify how to work in such a big regions. And I think that we just concluded the first step of our work in the region by mapping what the European Commission was already doing in the region and individual countries in terms of digital cooperation with our members, so the member states, and identifying which member states of the European member states are working also in the regions and on which thematic. And we are now compiling that information and crossing it to really see to work from a very pragmatic approach and a bottom-up approach to identify if there are countries where there are, I would say, at least one member state and the European Commission working already in the countries and see if this could be the basis to extend and expand the cooperation. Obviously, if a country has more than one member state and the European Commission already working it, that is even a better target. And that's what we are currently working on. I think it's a very concrete example on how the hub is working. Also, it's not creating only new initiatives, I would say, with new budget, but it's also trying to join forces on existing and bringing a more coherent EU voice to build for expanding after that for a potentially future cooperation on that basis. I think it's an interesting, good example on how the hub is also very working, I would say, from a bottom-up approach and a very hands-on approach, trying to develop synergies on this Team Europe philosophy.
Thank you, Sandro. That made me think of another cooperation in the region. So actually, previously I focused on Southeast Asia, so Philippines. Pacific is also, of course, an important region. And this is linking back to another question that we have that we received and that I answered. Actually, is about partnerships and Pacific. Probably important to know that Australia is hosting a Copernicus site. So they're providing services to Pacific Islands using the EU space program, and we are in talks and discussing with Australia to cooperate more in this area. So again, so it's about the EU, it's about Team Europe and D4D, and then also about other like-minded partners. So, and in the Pacific region is, of course, one of the most vulnerable regions when it comes to climate change, to rising sea levels, and their Earth observation really makes a difference when it comes also to disaster risk reduction and preparedness.
Well, thank you very much to both. We are almost at the end of the session, but before we close, we actually wanted to also ask a question to you. So everyone who's connected online, feel free to take a look at the question we are displaying. What are the strengths of the EU's approach to digital cooperation? We are very curious to hear from you, any comments, any thoughts you may have on this question. And yeah, looking forward to getting your answers on that. Okay, thank you everyone for sharing your comments on this question. I'm seeing some very interesting answers already. And since we are coming to the close of the session, I would just like to give an opportunity to our speakers to say a few last words, maybe taking into consideration some of the answers we're getting here on the strengths of the EU's approach to digital cooperation. And yeah, then we will have to close the session afterwards. So first of all, I will give the floor to Sandro.
Thank you. Okay. Thank you. In a nutshell, I think what I've tried to express here is that that's work in progress on our side. I think it's like always, a glass can be seen half empty or half full. Personally, I think that Europe has made quite a lot of progress because we were coming from, first of all, I think recognizing that digital now is not only an important element inside Europe, but also outside Europe, and that's a coherent approach. That from development cooperation, we have a larger engagement with our partner countries, which is in fact including, I would say, some very important aspect, including the human-centric approach. It's so important for Europe, and I'm thinking here, especially in the coming months or years, a discussion on artificial intelligence, which will be absolutely central, but also the cybersecurity or also the trusted vendors aspect that we are discussing regularly in DG Connect. Also, this multi-stakeholders approach that we try to come, and I've also tried to express it a bit the way that it's not a classical way where it's only a one way. I think it's perhaps easier among EU institutions, but also when we try to engage with the private sector, civil society, others, that it's only a one directional discussion, but a bilateral discussion that we can also feed and receive. And I think the hub is a kind of platform where it's offering that. And certainly was initiated as a high-level political initiative that was working, and we see it with, our extension from geographical footprint that has been expanded, and the numbers of members, European members that are joining progressively, as I said, is based on the free willingness. So the members who are joining because they are interested to come, I would say, or for a specific region and or a specific thematic. And we see that dynamic taking place. And I think the creation of a secretariat is also a proof that, I would say, we try now to structure that discussion and to try to also professionalize that platform to get, I would say, to our next step. And I would be, I say, very interested to see with the new commission where we can work, I would say, on that future.
Yes, and from my side, only a few words to complement what Sandro said. So, as mentioned, the EU has started late the race on digitalization, but I think we have managed to form a comprehensive offer and a distinctive offer. And I think this is something that is attractive for partner countries. We have mentioned it in several times. It's a human-centric offer. It's tackling the digital divide. It's where other actors, global actors, sometimes don't go. Because it's commercially not so attractive, and I think this is also important to mention here. And we do it jointly as a group of 27 countries. So that's also something that is different and has a lot to offer. Because as we said in some, and I think Sandro mentioned also, where there are some countries in the EU that are particularly advanced in some areas of digitalization. Cybersecurity in Estonia, of course. You have artificial intelligence, 3 or 4 EU member states that are really cutting edge there, and in other technologies too, when it comes to satellite technology and data processing. So we have a lot to offer. And we do it in an open and transparent way, and also providing then the tools for a sovereign management of these things to partner countries, which is, I think, also a distinction to other global actors. So, as I said at the beginning, we started late, but we are picking up speed, and I think we are on the right track. Thank you.
Thank you very much to all our speakers. Thank you to everyone who connected online for your active participation, for your really interesting questions. We really hope the session was insightful for you. And if you would like to keep informed about the D4D Hub, you can do so at d4dhub.eu. Thanks again. And with that, I would like to close the session and wish you a wonderful rest of the day.